This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Interim Superintendent of Ames Public Schools, Dr. Paula Vincent. We're going to have an amazing conversation about the role of the superintendent and what she is most excited about heading into next year. Dr. Paula Vincent, thank you so much for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. How are you?
I am well, and thank you for the invitation. I'm excited.
Well, welcome to Ames.
Oh my, what a great opportunity.
So you are now, I have to look at my calendar here, but probably your second week as the interim superintendent of
correct.
Ames Public
Yes.
Schools, and I will speak on behalf of everyone in this office, but I think really the community as a whole as well. Welcome to Ames. We're so excited for you to be here and lead our district over the next year.
Well, I am very humbled to have been invited by the board and so looking forward to the time here in Ames and back in Iowa.
So I want to take, some time early on in this episode just to walk through sort of your history in education. I mean, you have an amazing resume. You led Heartland AEA for several years, and somehow we pulled you back into public school here in Ames. So talk us through, your career, maybe some highlights.
Well, let me just begin by saying it's such a privilege and always has been to work in the field of public education. I just have such a deep belief that education always opens doors, and anything we can do to help brighten that future for our children and our youth and their families, that I get very passionate about that. So I see this as an extension of that work.
Yeah.
But just a very brief history. I began in education in the Kansas City area, in a suburb, Overland Park, working in the field of special education.
Yeah.
So that passion for individual children and what it takes to help them thrive drives my work.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed. So I see this as an extension of that. Spent many years in the classroom, worked some in Van Horn, Iowa.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
I've been in different spots. Been in a couple different AEAs, Grantwood AEA, Heartland AEA, the Cedar Rapids schools, Clear Creek Amana. I might be leaving someone out, but I think that's the list.
Yeah.
So in all those situations, what has always struck me is the absolute passion that Iowa educators have for trying to make the world a little bit better place. And that's my hope for here in Ames. That with community help, with the board partnership with our administrative and teaching staffs, that we really can make an impact that changes the life of a child. That's what we're all about.
So what was it about Ames that got you to come here? Now, I think maybe even before we get to that, we should be transparent. You're here for a year.
That's right. It's an interim position. We'll be very clear about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that's good. But what was it about Ames that made you think this would be a great fit?
Yes. Well, Ames obviously has a wonderful reputation, and the fact that we have the great resource of a Big 12 research university sitting right here. I grew up in Oklahoma in the back door of, I don't know if I can say this out loud, but Oklahoma State. But that land-grant connection has always been special to me. Our family is engaged in ranching and farming, still is, and so I've always had an affinity for the land-grant universities. That, along with the Ames School District, was a very interesting proposition.
Yeah.
We're fortunate to have some family here in Iowa. That obviously was a piece of it too, but mostly the opportunity to hopefully give back a little bit. People have been very helpful throughout my career in mentoring and helping focus on what's best for that individual child.
Yeah.
And if I can bring a little bit of that as Ames is in this transition, it just was a situation that seemed to work, hopefully, to the mutual benefit of all involved.
So I always think about this quite often, about the energy of school buildings. And, now we're in the summer and that energy's not there yet, but that starting on that first day of school when students come back in, and you touched on it some already about, the passion for public schools,
Absolutely.
but what do you enjoy seeing once this summer gets through and we're going to have school again in August? Like, what do you enjoy seeing, and what are you looking for when you get into buildings?
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. And actually, as we finish this today, I get my first taste of getting to get inside all of the buildings in the district, and I can't wait to see that. But even more than that, there is an energy that is in our buildings always. So having the interaction of children and children engaged in learning, if you're having a bad day, I know in this day and age you can't just walk into buildings, but you should arrange to spend some time in one of our buildings, whether it's with the young children or whether it's with our youth. It is just so interesting and gives me such hope for our future.
Yeah.
You just can't miss that energy, but you put that with dedicated staff, whether it is someone driving a bus, whether it is a teacher in a classroom. They are doing the best they can on a daily basis to make that difference. And that combination, what a privilege for all of us in public education.
So I know that, and I'll speak from my desk, sometimes it's hard to get out of my office, sometimes,
Sure.
and just because there's projects going on, there's meetings that you have to have. So how do you stay connected?
Yes. Wonderful question, and I'm at that great spot where you really do have a clean slate, right? I mean, I'm coming in brand
100%,
new, and in this case, with the COVID situation, so you can be very planful about that. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Hawkins and I were just planning yesterday about how do we keep ourselves connected to the building. So we are setting up sometimes intentionally.
I love it.
To work with our buildings, and more on our standpoint, to make sure we have that context about what's real today. We have others in the system that are handling the day-to-day operations at the building level, but I think it's really important for us to know what are our children doing. I like to be in buildings seeing, to the extent you can, asking kids, what are you doing and why? And just listening, because that gives you so much information about where we as a system, and hopefully administrators, can do work that helps smooth the way for that learning process.
Do you do that with like a lot of students, like elementary, middle school, high school?
It's my hope. I'm not going to promise yet, but it's my hope that I'm in our buildings at least a couple mornings a week at all levels. Because it's important for me to understand what's the experience like for our key clients. We have many, many stakeholders, but we're really here for the students. And what is their experience truly like from their point of view?
It's pretty fun in that I use our stories as an opportunity to get into our buildings, and it was really hard last year. And so actually, it's one of the things that I'm really excited about moving forward.
Absolutely.
And there's something that's sort of like balancing about having an elementary student ask you who you are and what you're doing, because they don't care. I mean, they don't care who you are.
That's correct.
You're foreign to them. So who are you?
And those to me are wonderful opportunities.
I love it.
You can engage with them, and one of the things that I'm always mindful of when I'm, really at any age, I want to know what they're thinking about their future. It's never too soon to have them thinking about what might I want to do when I grow up, and what will it take, and how could I help be in charge of my own learning. So I try to take those opportunities, too, to talk about, did you know I read every day, and I have mathematical responsibilities every day, and I'm so glad I got to learn about those things in school, because I can't think of a profession now where you aren't reading, dealing with mathematics, and having to navigate how do we work together as a team member.
So, your second weekend, obviously, you're meeting with people, you're kind of getting your bearings, background information, understanding of it.
Yes.
Where do you start? Where does your tenure here for the next year? And where do you start?
Well, the work of schools, interestingly enough, has some very common themes. So you're working on multiple things at the same time. One of those I'll call building context, that connection to the community. We
okay.
are the Ames Community School District.
Yeah.
So making as much contact as I can to understand different interests, different points of view, different context, all of that outreach in the community. At the heart are all those things. We're getting ready to open school. Isn't that exciting? School will be opening here soon. So there are a ton of things around teaching and learning that you just have to always be working on. Some of the givens, the operational things, what a great team I've observed so far taking care of those things. Everything from the construction projects to the planning for our new staff. Those things have to be on the plate.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not finding that I'm running out of things to do.
You're not bored yet?
I'm not bored yet.
I am always amazed at all of the background work that happens during the summer. And I oftentimes get asked this question, like, is it lighter for you right now? No, actually it gets lighter like when school starts, because you always have these summer lists of things to do.
Correct. Yeah.
So you've been an associate superintendent before, you've ran a school district, you've led Heartland AEA. In your opinion, what is the role? What is your role in this school district?
Well, some people would answer that by saying you've got to be the lead learner, and there are some aspects of that I certainly would say absolutely. There's so much of learning that I hope we're always approaching the job with curiosity.
Yeah.
And, as a leader, asking those deep questions, listening for how is it that we can, as administrators, leaders, superintendent, do the best we can, again, for children to thrive. That is job one. That usually entails, in my experience, how can we support our staff? We can't do the work we need to do without them feeling like they can do their best work.
Yeah.
And you can't do the job without involving the family and the community. So how do you engage with families and communities in an authentic way so that you're all rowing, so to speak, in that same direction?
Yeah.
That's my primary job.
So as far as your, leadership style goes, how would you describe it?
Yeah. Definitely one that I have appreciated through the years. We can do our best work when we collaborate with each other.
Yeah.
So it is very much one of trying to help people work together to get their best ideas on the table. I'm hopeful that my leadership style is also one that helps us think about what are the underlying structures and processes along with the information that we need, so that as we are acting, we're acting out of intention with a clear vision, a clear purpose, and clear metrics, quite honestly, to know is what we're doing making the difference we hope for, and if not, how can we make incremental iterative changes as we go along.
Rather than just thinking this is working or maybe it's not working, how do we know? How do we measure it?
Yeah. The old saying, if you don't know where you're going or you don't care where you're going, anywhere will do.
Yeah.
Well, our work is too important. We can't leave it to that kind of a chance.
Yeah.
So being very clear about what we're trying to accomplish, very intentional about checking how do we know and what are we going to use, what information is there where we don't have to recreate the wheel to try to get those outcomes that we're after.
I always find the work, the to-do lists never get shorter and the projects never cease, but I always find summer as an opportunity to reflect on, the projects and things that we've done in the past, but also, what maybe didn't go according to plan, because we always, we can move forward into this next school year.
Right.
And it always provides me a sense of optimism of going into the next school year. And last year, was particularly challenging on a number of levels. And it's going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say back to normal because it certainly isn't, but it's always an opportunity to improve.
it can be a new beginning,
Yeah.
always. And again, I firmly believe that people are doing the best they can. Families are doing the best they can. And
Yeah.
together, we have a great opportunity to make this a wonderful school year. And that will be our hope.
Yeah.
So I'm like you, that summertime, it is very busy, very hectic. But I hope it is also that reflective time to think about what are the most important 2 or 3 big things that we can be working on, and how are we going to do that in a way that at the end of the year we can look back and say, yes, we have made this progress, and now here's the next challenge, because the work is never finished.
Do you oftentimes take time to reflect? Logistics get in the way of a lot. Emails, I got this and that to do, but sometimes you just have to think.
Absolutely. That's, I am finding that this group that I can't take any credit for, but the group of leaders that are in the district that I've had a chance to start to get acquainted with, very much a group of folks that are grounded in their theory and the philosophies and willing to share those so we can all push on each other. Because, just because we have them doesn't mean they're right.
Yeah.
But yes, try to do that with great intention. And you're right, any given day, you're marking things off the to-do list, but I hope that we are taking time every week to reflect on what are those priorities, what did we intend to do, what got done, what has to be moved forward, what has to be changed. So you try to get those routines set up where you use that benefit of reflective thought.
So this next year, there will be an opportunity where a tough decision needs to be made.
Absolutely.
And inevitably, that tough decision, it'll run through, maybe principals or directors, but ultimately it will come to, our team and your table. How do we make those tough decisions?
I hope we always help ourselves be curious about what are the multiple points of view. Get up on the balcony. What can I see? What would this aspect of a community or this aspect of a family life, what are the multiple factors? So you get as broad a view as you can. What do we know? We now have a pretty solid base of research in education. There was a time in my career where I wouldn't have said that. Could have been naivete on my part, but there are things, most of the issues we face, there is information to be had. So have we got ourselves informed as much as we can about what can be known about this? Yeah. And then you do sometimes just have to make a judgment, hopefully based on some guiding principles of what is fair, what has the best outcome for those involved, and again, have we been well informed about it? So you use some of those processes. And at the end of the day, what's the best we can do with that situation today, knowing that we get to revisit that over time, and if we made an error, which we will, how can we correct that as quickly as possible?
I was just going to say, over the course of, I could say a career, but I could probably even say insert any academic school year, there have probably been tough decisions that have been made that have gone really well, and others that, you want to circle back to. But I kind of, I saw you make like this circle.
Yes,
But that is part of the process, I think. I don't think there's any shame in revisiting a decision if it necessarily didn't go according to plan.
Yeah. And hopefully with some of the big things, you have some time to be planful. Sometimes you do have to make a decision on the spot, which I understand. But some of the work that has been helpful in my career comes from some of the quality work, particularly from Dr. Deming, where you think about, you plan for what is it you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. You actually do. You learn by doing the work, and then you reflect. Yeah. Here's what we wanted to do. Here's what we did. Here's what we learned. Here's how we're going to adjust. And you never assume that a one-time finishes the work for the big items anyway.
I've been a part of a number of conversations where this reminder continually comes up, and I'm wondering if you have to continue to remind yourself of it in that when making a decision, we always think about how does this impact students? You know,
Right,
because
right.
in many ways, yes, it's a public school system, but you know, it has a large operating budget. In many ways, it's a large organization and
Yeah.
business, but we always have students at the center of it. But you know, of course, there are all sorts of the other things, you know, that go along with running a business, and yet at the heart of it is students that are in our buildings that are learning. And do you take time to think about that and just, you know, reflect on it often?
Yeah. You know, I hope that that is just a natural for all of us, that that's always one of the questions we ask ourselves. How does this benefit students? How does this affect students? And then you work out from there. But it is about the student.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that is why we exist. That is
Yeah.
our primary purpose. I think a piece that I have learned to appreciate over time is that as we make those decisions about students, you need to be intentional, in my opinion, about what are the structures that are in place to help that student, what are those processes, again, what's that knowledge base, and it takes all of those base items that you have to attend to in order to affect that consistently for all children. But again, with my background in special ed in particular, always have been driven by student.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that a point in your career that has stuck with you? I mean, you know, I've heard you say, you know, working in special ed. I worked in special ed for a number of years, and I think about it quite often.
You know, it's interesting as a mom. You know, Steve and I have 2 children that are now grown adults. They're on their own, which is wonderful. But it was a little bit surprising to me, I think, as a mother to recognize, even with 2 children, they are quite different. You know, they were in the same household, pretty close together in age, and it just reinforced that notion for me that as humans, we all have different interests, we have different strengths, we have different areas where we need supports to accomplish things. And so that really has been woven into my educational philosophy, and probably part of the reason I was driven to special ed in the beginning was that opportunity to truly be able to work student by student by student. But I have found over a long career, it is all about the individual students, and then how can we as a system try to put forth the best for the most, but we should be accountable to every single one.
That's funny in that my wife and I, we have twins.
Okay,
they're
fun.
9 now.
Oh, fun.
So we have a boy and a girl, and I don't remember if I told this story on a previous podcast episode, but we went into assembly line mode for a while when they were babies.
Trying to survive,
yeah,
correct?
when one ate, the other one ate. You know, when you change one diaper, you change 2 diapers, just, you know, for our sanity. And then it came a point where very clearly these are 2 different individuals. Like, you cannot treat them the same. And so they have the same age, you know, the same upbringing, and yet they are very different individuals. And so it just made me think of that when you said that.
Yeah. Well, and I think as families, we all want the same things.
Yeah, we do.
But how we're going to get there, it's going to, by the nature of our experiences, circumstances, things that we can't control, it's going to require some individualization.
Yeah. Well, I've spoken with several people who are very excited for you to be here in Ames, and I know it's only for a year, but just having spoken with you prior to this episode, but also on this podcast, I'm just really excited about the perspective that you're going to be able to bring into Ames. And part of that's based on, you know, your experience, but also your personality. And I've already heard just many really amazing things. So to close out, what are you most excited about?
I am just very excited to be joining the team and looking forward to the learning I know I will do from benefiting to be here in Ames, and just hopeful that together at the end of the time, we have a brand new, wonderful leader for Ames, and that we can look back and say, yes, we accomplished a few things that in some small way made a difference for the students that are here.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really wonderful, and I'm excited for the year. Well, it's already started for many of us, but I'm
Absolutely.
excited for it.
I am too.
To get here. Although I'm sure many students and parents, embrace the summer. We got another month and a half, but
That's
it will
right.
be here.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to meeting as many people as I can, and
Yep.
we just encourage folks. I love to have a chance to hear the different stories from our staff, from our families. So don't be shy about that either.
Well, great. Well, Dr. Paula Vincent, thank you so much for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast.
Thank you, Eric.